What's going on there, guys? Welcome back to a new format episode that I am calling the Craftavore Talks. And so, given that obvious name, what do you think this episode is going to be about? Basically, it's my version of a beer talk video. And this is a format that I thought I was going to unveil on the channel much sooner than I have. And that's strictly based on the fact that I really couldn't kind of come across a topic over the course of the last, I don't know, 6 to 8 months, where I really wanted to do kind of one of these beer talk videos. I kind of wanted to hold out into or until, a really kind of specific topic that I was, either had a very strong opinion about or was super passionate about. And I think I've found that particular topic. And so, with that said, I wanted to debut this new format called the Craftavore Talks. And really, just the purpose is just a beer talk video where I'll talk about a particular topic and then hope to spark a conversation with you guys via the comments section. And hopefully that'll be kind of fun. So, basically, the title of this debut episode of the Craftavore Talks is "What is Happening with Trillium Brewing Company." So, couple things. First and foremost, I am an unabashed Trillium fanboy. Have been since I discovered them via a good friend's recommendation back in 2013. They were actually only open for, I don't know, maybe 8 months or so at the time when I was recommended by a friend to check them out when I was up in Boston. Um, and so, I'm an unabashed Trillium fanboy, and to take that one step further, if anyone up until this point would have asked me what my favorite brewery was of the last 5 years, my answer would have been Trillium Brewing Company out of Boston, Massachusetts. So I want to kind of, be upfront about that because, there's a particular reason why I chose this topic to be my first episode of Beer Talk, and that's because I'm super passionate about the brewery of which this topic is about, and I'm kind of a little bit shocked as to kind of what has allegedly or been alleged to have take place with them for some time now. So, to get everybody kind of up to speed, if you're not 100% onto what's been taking place up in Trillium, it's kind of twofold, right? So, first, and this is kind of dating back a little bit of time now, I had heard that they had changed via my buddy Bud, who actually through his cousin, and then I actually heard it from multiple people since then, that Trillium actually changed their fermentation process. And so a lot of the flagship beers, like your Four Points, like the Streets, things like that, completely tasted nothing like what the original recipes did. And that's soul crushing for me, just because I loved those beers so much. And again, favorite brewery of the last 5 years. So to kind of hear that they changed their fermentation profile, so much so that a lot of those beers, frankly, to a lot of people, from what I've seen on the message boards, Beer Advocate, Talk Beer, etc., that they are completely unrecognizable. That the new fermentation process, or I guess perhaps they're utilizing a new yeast strain, is leaving a much kind of fuller mouthfeel and is making the beers like super kind of sticky and like very, very sweet. Almost to the point where people are drain pouring them, which is, if you were a fan of Trillium Brewing Company kind of in the height of their lighting the craft beer world on fire circa 2014, 2015, the idea of a drain pour coming from Trillium outside of everyone's famous collaboration with Monkish, Never and Again, the idea of a drain pour would be unthinkable. So that's kind of segment number one. Follow that up to Wednesday of this past week, so the day before Thanksgiving. There was a thread on Beer Advocate, and I don't know whether it started on Beer Advocate and then transitioned to their Facebook page, or if it was vice versa. Not 100% sure. But there have been a series of past employees who actually started recently posting and kind of accused Trillium Brewing Company and their owners, JC and Esther, of some pretty unsavory business practices. One of those being that they reduced their employees' wages from $8 an hour to $5 an hour when the new Fort Point location opened up, um, which came complete with a restaurant, and that their wages were reduced by $3 per hour, and that folks that were actually um, working for Trillium for a number of years had to kind of re-interview for their jobs, which is pretty shitty. And then there was some additional kind of even more serious allegations, if you can kind of believe that, of throwing tequila into kegs of beers that they were serving, and then told to tell customers that these were wild or sour beers that were aged in tequila barrels, and all of this other kind of stuff. So a lot of kind of unsavory news that's coming out. And so this kind of hurts me and hits me pretty close to home, again, just because of how much of a huge fan I've been of that brewery. I will say, however, that, and this is kind of the area where I really wanted to kind of focus this Craftavore Talks episode about, and really want to kind of hear back from you guys on what you feel. Trillium expanded at a lightning pace since opening up in 2013. They were an extremely, extremely small brewery in the Fort Point or Seaport section of Boston. Literally, they went through some issues in their first year where they were actually operating for a number of months without state licensing. It's the truth. And so they had a really small kind of operation where you can go in and get kind of growler fills and, get at that time, 750 bombers of their beers. Couldn't have anything on site, and it was just a really, really tiny operation. They then expanded out to creating a massive, huge new brewery in Canton, Massachusetts, which is just a little south of Boston. And then even further beyond that, they started, branching out into like different beer gardens across the city. They've then since now closed down the old area in Fort Point and opened up a new one, complete with a restaurant that is quadruple the size. And they have even then announced just the last couple of months that they have purchased a farm in and around Stonington, Connecticut, I believe. So, I mean, that's an insane amount of expansion for a company that, or a brewery that is 5 years old. And so one of the things that I really, really gave Trillium applause for was the fact that when they opened Canton and when they did these series of beer gardens, from what I could tell, I haven't had their beers in quite some time, but, I had the beers post Canton for quite some time. And what really shocked me, outside of like a first couple of weeks when they were dialing in that new system, they kept the quality of their beers when they were literally producing probably 500% more than what they were at their Fort Point location. And so I always kind of considered Trillium to be an outlier in the sense of a brewery that was able to expand at kind of breakneck pace while still keep true to the beer and who they were. Well, with these new allegations, if they are true, and it kind of blew up to the point where a Boston Globe reporter contacted JC to kind of talk about these allegations, and it kind of became a little bit of a thing. And so, what I kind of really wanted to talk a little bit about and kind of get your feedback on is what's going on with Trillium. If you guys in Boston, are watching the channel or you're watching this particular episode, would love to hear a little bit of feedback of, what your insight is, having being a local. I haven't been up there in quite some time. Is the beers that are coming across right now from that new Fort Point location not good? Is it completely different as to what you remember those beers being from the original Fort Point location and even Canton? And I don't know if that new fermentation profile is across both breweries. I would assume it is. And then there's kind of a little bit more of a discussion that I kind of wanted to have, which was, it's very clear that in some cases, as it relates to how they've treated their employees or allegedly have treated their employees, and to now kind of trying to fix something that isn't broken for some reason, being the beers, and it's perhaps maybe have they gone after a new yeast style that could be less in cost? And so the question that I have for you is, are Are we seeing an instance, and what is your feeling on a brewery who professes themselves for a number of years to be like family, is really connected to the local community and the people that it serves, and obviously the city and all those other different things, and supports the craft beer community, and then kind of turns out that they have expanded at a breakneck pace, and in order to potentially maybe save some costs, or perhaps to, I don't know, make sure that their investors, if this is the case, their investors that invested in them get paid out significantly faster and quicker, that they begin cutting some serious corners. And obviously, in a lot of different ways, when companies want to save money, unfortunately, they often cut from two places, and one being usually their workforce or their staff, and the second being taking and cutting corners with their product. So it's possible that we may be seeing that here with Trillium. I hope not, and I hope that JC and Esther kind of hear a lot what of the community happens to be saying, and perhaps maybe they can do things right by, first and foremost, obviously the employees that have been with them for a number of years, and obviously, like in an expensive city like Boston, have kind of sacrificed to be able to kind of work there and see and be a part of watching their dreams come true. And then hopefully maybe perhaps being able to, I don't know, bring the beer back to what it was, right? Which is the reason why we all started going there in the first place. So anyway, gonna throw that out there. What's going on with Trillium Brewing Company? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Would love to kind of open up a little bit of discussion to kind of see what everybody feels. Any kind of news or interesting tidbits that they have kind of heard, and like even more so, what's your thoughts on the future of Trillium Brewing Company? All right, so that'll do it for this debut episode of the Craftavore Talks. And I will likely probably be doing more of these when topics arise that I get super passionate about. And then we'll take it from there. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you back for another episode. Cheers.